It was one of those days that felt heavy from the moment the morning light touched the window. The air felt still, and even though the world outside was waking up, the person inside the small room felt like they were moving through something thick and slow. They sat on the edge of their bed, trying to gather enough energy to start the day. But their mind was already filled with worries before they even stood up. It had become a routine, something they had grown used to, even though it made everyday life feel harder than it should be. Work had been pushing them for weeks. Deadlines, expectations, and conversations that felt rushed and sharp made them feel like they were losing tiny pieces of themselves every day. At home, things weren't much easier. There were responsibilities waiting the moment they walked through the door. And even the small things like washing dishes or answering simple questions felt like a weight on their shoulders. Nothing dramatic, nothing unusual, but when all these little things kept piling up, it felt like carrying a load too heavy for one person. They tried to stay calm, tried to pretend everything was fine, but deep down they felt the slow rise of exhaustion that had been building for months. It wasn't the kind of tiredness that sleep could fix. It was a deeper tiredness, the kind that makes your thoughts slow and your chest feel tight without a reason you can explain. Some days they wondered if something was wrong with them, or if this was just how adult life was supposed to feel. As the days passed, the feeling didn't get better. They woke up tired and went to sleep tired. And sometimes they lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the night, wishing for anything that could give their mind a moment of rest. They didn't know what they needed. They knew they couldn't keep going the same way. One evening, after spending the whole day trying to hold themselves together, they sat down on their bed again. Their bag was still by the door, their phone buzzing with messages they didn't feel like reading. The room was dim with only a soft light from a single lamp. They sat there in silence, elbows on their knees, head in their hands. Feeling the kind of tiredness that went beyond the body, they took a slow breath, hoping it would calm them down, but it didn't help much. Their mind was full of noise thoughts about work, people, responsibilities, and things they kept forgetting. They wished they could press pause for just a moment. Their eyes drifted to their phone on the bed, and without thinking too much, they unlocked it. Their thumb hovered over the screen, unsure what they wanted to search for. After a moment, they typed words they didn't even plan to write, calming classical music. Maybe they just wanted silence with a little softness. Maybe they hoped sound could fill the emptiness they felt. Or maybe they simply needed a moment where the world didn't feel so loud. The results popped up quickly. There were many choices: long playlists, short ones, live recordings, old pieces, new arrangements. They clicked on a random video without reading the full title. It didn't matter which one it was. They just needed something gentle. The screen shifted to the video, and a soft, slow melody began to play. It wasn't dramatic or grand. It wasn't the type of music people played in big halls or at special events. It was simple, gentle, and warm like a soft breeze touching the inside of their mind. At first they just listened with a blank expression, unsure if it would help. Their breathing was still uneven from the stress of the day. Their shoulders were still tense. But as the first minute passed, something small began to change. Their shoulders lowered just a little. Their breath slowed without them noticing. Their fingers relaxed, no longer curled tightly. They leaned back slowly until they were resting against the headboard. Their eyes softened, not fully closing, but no longer sharp and tired. The notes moved gently, rising and falling in a way that didn't ask for attention, but offered comfort instead. As the music continued, they felt something they hadn't felt in a long time, a small wave of calm. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't erase their stress or fix their problems, but it softened something inside them. The tightness in their chest eased slightly. Their thoughts, which had been rushing all day, slowed down like a river finally calming after a storm. They closed their eyes. Not to sleep, just to listen. The room felt different now, even though nothing had changed. The same lamp, the same quiet, the same worries waiting in the background. But the music created a small space where none of that mattered for a moment. Memories appeared in their mind, drifting lightly like scenes in a movie. Moments from childhood when days felt longer and gentler. Times when they didn't worry about the future or whether they were doing enough. Small memories that carried warmth, sitting near a window during a rainy evening, holding a warm cup in winter, walking alone in early morning sunlight. They didn't know why the music brought these memories back, but they didn't push them away. They let them come and go without judgment. The more they listened, the more the day's weight began to loosen its grip. They realized how long it had been since they allowed themselves to feel anything softly. Everything in life had been rushed, busy, or stressful. This moment felt different. The music wasn't telling them what to feel or how to think. It simply existed, offering a gentle place for their mind to rest. Minutes passed without them noticing. The room felt quieter, even though the music filled the air. Their body relaxed into the bed, their breath deepening naturally. The tension in their jaw eased. Their heartbeat felt steadier. They wondered why they hadn't tried something like this before. Classical music wasn't something they usually listened to. They thought it was only for people who understood instruments or loved old traditions. But in this moment, it felt like it belonged to them too. It felt like the music understood something about tired hearts and crowded minds. For the first time in weeks, they felt a softness inside themselves, a feeling they thought they had lost. It wasn't happiness exactly, but it was a quiet kind of relief. The music continued, and they let themselves sink deeper into the moment. The notes flowed like water, carrying away some of the heaviness inside them. They didn't try to control their thoughts or force calmness. They just let the music do what it wanted to do. As time passed, they lay down on their side, still listening. The room felt warmer somehow, not because the temperature changed, but because their mind wasn't fighting everything anymore. They felt the comfort of the soft blanket, the quiet air, and the steady sound of the music. Their eyes grew heavier, not from exhaustion this time, but from a sense of peace settling over them. Their mind, which had been running nonstop for so long, finally found a place to rest. Before they realized it, their breathing turned slow and even. Their thoughts faded into the background. The music felt like a gentle hand on their shoulder, telling them it was okay to let go. They fell asleep like that, quietly, naturally, without effort. A kind of sleep that felt soft and safe, the kind they hadn't experienced in months. When morning arrived, sunlight entered the room softly. They blinked awake, surprised by how rested they felt. Their mind wasn't heavy. Their chest didn't feel tight. For a moment, they simply lay there, listening to the quiet. They didn't know why they felt better. But a thought crossed their mind in a soft whisper. Maybe it was the music. It felt like a small discovery, something gentle and hopeful. They sat up slowly, stretching their arms as the morning light touched their face. Today didn't feel perfect, and the problems of life hadn't disappeared, but something inside them had shifted. They wondered what would happen if they listened again, if those soft notes could help them begin the day with a little more peace. They reached for their phone, not out of habit, but with a quiet sense of curiosity. For the first time in a long while, they felt like maybe things could get better. One calm moment at a time. The next day moved slowly, but in a different way than usual. There was a calmness in the air that the person couldn't quite explain. They woke up feeling lighter, as if the weight on their chest had quietly slipped away during the night. Even though the world outside was still busy and loud, something inside them felt a little quieter. They didn't rush out of bed like they usually did. Instead, they stretched gently and allowed themselves a moment to breathe before standing up. As they moved through their morning routine, small things felt easier. The sound of running water, the warmth of their tea, and even the cool air from the open window felt more noticeable. It wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, like the world had softened around the edges. They weren't sure why, but deep down they suspected it had something to do with the music they fell asleep to. Before leaving for the day, they picked up their phone and opened the same video of calming classical music. They didn't plan it. Their fingers simply moved there, as if the music had left a quiet imprint on their mind. They pressed play and soft notes began filling the room once again. This time, they listened with more awareness. Yesterday, the music had surprised them. Today, it felt familiar, almost comforting. The melody wrapped around the morning quietness, creating a gentle moment before the day truly began. For a few minutes, they just stood there, letting the sound settle into their mind. When they finally stepped outside, the world looked the same, but they felt different. The usual rush of cars and voices didn't make their heart jump the way it usually did. Their steps were slower, their breathing steadier. They felt like the music had followed them out into the world, staying with them like an invisible companion. At work, things were still busy. People still asked questions quickly. Tasks still piled up. But the person felt a bit more grounded. When stress rose, they paused for a brief second, remembering the calm sound from the morning. It wasn't perfect. Stress still came. Frustration still touched them, but it didn't take over completely the way it had before. Around lunchtime, he found a quiet corner and sat alone for a moment. They took out their phone again, not to scroll through messages or news, but to play the music quietly through their earbuds. As soon as the melody reached their ears, they felt their shoulders relax. It felt strange how something so simple could create such a shift inside them, but they didn't question it. They just listened. The music created a small space in their mind where everything slowed down. They closed their eyes for a few seconds, breathing slowly as the familiar calmness washed over them. Even though they were surrounded by people and noise, the music made them feel like they were in a gentle space of their own. For the rest of the day, they carried that softness with them. When a coworker spoke quickly, or when the workload increased, the person reminded themselves of the gentle notes that had soothed them. It didn't make everything easy, but it helped them stay steady by the time they returned home that evening. They felt tired but not overwhelmed. It was a different kind of tiredness, one that came from effort, not emotional weight. They set their bag down, sat on their bed, and allowed themselves a slow breath. The room felt peaceful again, just like the night before. They lay back for a moment and thought about their day. It wasn't perfect. Stress had still come in waves, but something had shifted. There was a softness inside them now, a small calmness that had not been there for months. They wondered how something as simple as music could do this. They didn't fully understand it, but they appreciated it before they could overthink. They opened their phone and searched for more calming classical pieces. They found playlists made by people around the world, each filled with melodies meant to comfort tired hearts. The titles alone made them feel understood, words like peaceful evening, gentle piano, quiet mind. They clicked on one and let the music begin. This melody was different from the one they heard the night before. It had a softer rise, almost like a whisper. As it played, the person felt their mind settle in again. The sound moved slowly, carrying a warm gentleness that reached deep inside them. They lay on their back, eyes half open, staring at the ceiling as the music floated around them. They felt something shift inside, a quiet connection forming with the sound. It was as if the music didn't just play in the room. It moved through them. Their thoughts began to drift again, but this time in a soft, peaceful way. They remembered moments from childhood once more. Moments spent sitting near open windows, watching leaves move gently in the wind. Moments when they felt safe, unhurried, and free from the noise of adult life. These memories didn't come with sadness or longing. They came with warmth. The music seemed to carry them back to simpler times, not to escape the present, but to remind them that calmness once existed in their life, and it could exist again. Hours passed without them realizing. They didn't fall asleep right away this time. Instead, they stayed awake, letting the sound wash through their thoughts, soften their worries, bring them back into themselves. There was something deeply human about the way the music touched them. It didn't ask for anything. It didn't judge them. It simply offered a gentle place to rest. Later that night, they finally slid under the blanket. The music continued in the background, its notes fading into the quiet room like dim stars settling into the night. Their eyes grew heavy again, but this time it felt intentional, peaceful. Just before drifting off, a thought passed through their mind. Maybe this could become a part of their life. Maybe it wasn't just a one-time moment of calm. Maybe this music was something their mind had been needing for a long time. When morning came again, they woke up with a clearer head. Their sleep felt smoother, like a steady wave that carried them through the night. They sat up slowly, noticing the comfort in their body. Their chest felt open. Their breathing felt deeper. Without thinking, they reached for their phone and played the music once more. It had already become a part of their morning, something their heart gently leaned toward as they listened. A small smile touched their lips, subtle, almost invisible but real. The music filled the space around them, turning an ordinary morning into something warm throughout the day. They found themselves returning to the melody whenever they needed a breath of calm. It became a habit, not forced or planned, but natural. A simple way to steady their mind. Classical music wasn't something they had ever thought about before. It wasn't part of their daily life or their usual routines. But now, it felt like a quiet friend, one that understood tiredness and spoke directly to the heart. As days passed, the connection grew stronger. The person found comfort in different pieces, piano tunes that felt like gentle rain, violin notes that carried warmth, soft orchestral melodies that felt like a hug in sound form. They started learning how each tune affected them. Some made their mind clearer. Some made their heart feel lighter. Some brought a deep stillness they didn't know they needed. They began playing music during small moments while they cleaned their room, while they cooked, while they walked outside. Life still had its challenges. Stress still appeared. Problems didn't vanish. But now the person had something to turn to, a space made of sound, calm and comfort. One night, while sitting by their window, they listened to a new piece. The sky outside was dark, with only a few lights from distant buildings. They rested their head against the window frame and let the music flow as they breathed slowly. The person felt a deep connection awaken inside them. It wasn't dramatic or overwhelming. It was gentle, like a soft realization. The music was healing them, slowly, quietly, but surely. They didn't know what the rest of their journey would look like. They didn't know whether life would get easier or harder. But in that moment, with calming classical music filling the space around them, they felt their mind and heart open in a way they hadn't felt in a long time. It was the beginning of something. It's meaningful, something small, but powerful enough to guide them forward, one calm note at a time. The days that followed began to settle into a gentle rhythm, almost like a slow and steady breath that the person hadn't felt in a long time. Something inside them was changing, not in a sudden way that felt dramatic, but in a quiet and natural way that felt real. Each morning started with the soft sound of classical music filling the small space around them, guiding their mind into the day with a calm that felt healing. They didn't plan for this new habit. It simply grew on its own. Whenever they woke up with a heavy mind, the gentle notes lifted some of the weight. Whenever they felt anxious, the melody softened the edges of their thoughts. Whenever their heart felt tired, the music wrapped around them like a warm blanket. The person found themselves looking forward to those calm moments. They would sit on the edge of their bed, cup their hands around a warm drink, and let the music wash over their morning. It made the start of the day feel less rushed. It made their breathing feel deeper. It made the world feel just a little bit kinder. People around them began noticing the change too. They didn't suddenly become cheerful or overly energetic, but there was a softness to their presence now, a quiet balance that had been missing before. The small frowns that used to appear on their face during stressful moments were fewer. Their voice sounded steadier. They paused more often, listened more calmly, and reacted with a little more patience. One morning, while riding public transport, they watched people rush around. Some looked stressed, some irritated, some lost in their own world. The person felt a quiet understanding rise within them. They knew how heavy life could feel. They knew what it was like to carry things silently, and they wondered if any of these people had something. Anything to bring them a moment of calm the way music now did for them as the train moved. They put in their earbuds and played one of their favorite calming tracks. Instantly, the stressful noise around them faded. The sound of footsteps, loud conversations, and announcements dissolved into the background. The music created a small, peaceful space within the busy environment, and they felt themselves settle in. The day felt easier after that. Even when work got busy, the person felt more anchored. Whenever they sensed their thoughts speeding up, they took slow breaths and reminded themselves of the gentle notes they had heard earlier. Later that evening, when they returned home, they followed a familiar routine. They placed their bag down, washed up, and then sat on their bed with the music softly playing. They didn't force themselves to think about anything specific. They just allowed the melodies to open the quiet parts of their mind. As the music flowed, they felt present, fully present for the first time in years. They noticed the subtle warmth of the room, the softness of their blanket, and the simple comfort of being in a space where nothing rushed them. It felt grounding. It felt healing. Some evenings they would lie down and listen with their eyes closed. Other evenings they would stay seated by the window, watching the sky change colors as the day turned into night. Sometimes the music made them think deeply. Other times it let their mind float lightly without direction. What surprised them the most was how the music helped them face emotions gently. Instead of pushing away sadness or stress, the music made it safe to feel things in a soft and natural way. When old memories surfaced, they didn't hurt as sharply. When regrets or worries tried to rise, the music softened them until they felt manageable. They didn't suddenly become someone new or someone perfect. They still had moments of frustration, days when things felt harder, and moments where stress tried to return. But now they had a way to steady themselves. They had something to lean on one afternoon while sitting at their desk. They decided to play music in the background as they worked. The soft sound filled the room, and the person felt their focus deepen. Their mind didn't jump from one thought to another. Their attention stayed steady, moving from one task to the next without rushing. It felt surprising. They didn't expect music to help with focus. They thought calming melodies would make them sleepy or slow. But instead, the gentle rhythm helped them concentrate without feeling overwhelmed. That evening, they reflected on how much had changed. Not long ago, they were waking up each day with a heavy mind and going to sleep feeling drained. Now, even though life wasn't perfect, they felt more in control. They felt more connected to themselves. There was one moment that stood out especially clearly. It happened one quiet night when the person was sitting near their window with the music playing softly behind them. The night air outside was cool, and the lights from distant streets glowed softly. As they listened to a slow piano piece, they felt tears forming not from sadness, but from something much softer. It was the feeling of being able to breathe again. The feeling of finding something that made the heavy parts of life easier to carry. The feeling of reconnecting with themselves after months of feeling lost. The tears didn't frighten them. They didn't try to stop them. They let the moment unfold naturally. The music held them gently, allowing their emotions to move freely without fear or pressure. It was a moment of release, a quiet, healing release after that night. They understood something important. The music wasn't just sound. It was a kind of support they didn't know they needed. A quiet companion that helped them navigate their thoughts and feelings over time. They built a small collection of their favorite calming pieces. Some were slow and gentle, some warm and steady, and others carried a sense of deep peace. They played them during moments of stress, during quiet mornings, during late nights when their thoughts felt too loud. The more they listened, the more they learned about themselves. They learned what kind of music soothed their mind when it raced. They learned which melodies helped them sleep and which helped them focus. They learned how sound could shift their emotions, guiding them toward balance. Even on days when life felt heavy again, the person didn't fall into the same darkness they once did. The music gave them a tool to return to. It reminded them that calm moments were possible, even in the middle of chaos. At work, they became more patient. When someone spoke harshly, or when things became chaotic, they didn't react as quickly as before. They paused, breathed, and kept calm. People noticed the difference. Some even commented on how peaceful their energy felt. One coworker asked, "How do you stay so calm lately?" The person smiled softly and simply replied, "I found something that helps me slow down." They didn't go into detail. The experience felt personal, almost sacred. But the truth was simple. The calming classical music had become a part of their life. On weekends, they started spending time doing small activities with music in the background. Simple things like tidying their room, watering plants, or writing down thoughts in a notebook. These moments became pockets of peace, little reminders that calmness didn't need to be complicated. One evening, they decided to take a walk outside with their earbuds in. The sky was a soft shade of orange as the sun began to set. The cool breeze brushed against their face, and the calming melody blended beautifully with the peaceful evening air as they walked down the quiet street. They felt a deep sense of presence. Every step felt deliberate and relaxed. Every breath felt steady. The music made the world feel softer, as if everything around them was moving gently. They watched leaves sway on tree branches. They listened to the distant sounds of life, voices, cars, footsteps, yet the music kept them steady in their own quiet bubble. In that moment, they felt a comforting realization. They were slowly becoming themselves again. They weren't fully healed. Life wasn't perfect, but they were finding their way back. They thought about how far they had come, how only a short time ago they had felt trapped inside their own mind, how stress had pulled them in every direction, how sleep felt impossible and mornings felt heavy. Now, things were different. Not because life had changed, because they had found something that helped them change inside. When they returned home, they felt refreshed. They sat near their window again and watched the evening settle into night. The music played softly, gently guiding their thoughts. They realized that this was becoming a journey, one that was changing them slowly and naturally. A journey of calming their mind and softening their heart. They didn't know where the journey would lead. They didn't need to know. For now, they were simply grateful. Grateful for the small moments of peace. Grateful for the soft melodies that helped them breathe. Grateful for the chance to reconnect with themselves. And as the night grew quiet, they rested their head on their pillow with the music playing softly in the background. Their eyes closed slowly, their mind drifting into a peaceful state. They knew the journey wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The evening air felt cool as the person stepped outside, letting the fresh breeze touch their face. It had been a long day, but not in the heavy way it used to be. It was more like a day filled with steady movement, calm thoughts, and small reminders to breathe. The calming music they listened to earlier still echoed softly in their mind. Like a gentle memory they could return to whenever they needed it. They walked slowly along the quiet street, hands tucked in their pockets, taking in the peaceful surroundings. Streetlights glowed with a soft yellow light, and the sky above them had already turned a deep shade of blue. The world felt calm, and so did they, even though the day had brought its share of challenges. Something inside them felt different. They didn't grow frustrated as quickly. They didn't rush from one thought to another. They allowed themselves to pause whenever things felt too loud. They allowed themselves to feel without judgment. And each time they paused, the music they loved helped guide them back to a gentle, steady place. As they walked, they remembered how things were before this journey started. They used to wake up with a heavy mind, carrying stress like a weight on their shoulders. They used to push through each day, forcing themselves to keep up with everything around them. There were moments when life felt too fast, moments when they felt lost inside their own thoughts. But now, things were shifting. Not in a sudden way, but in a slow and real way. The calming classical music had become more than a background sound. It had become a companion of presence that helped them reconnect with themselves. They reached the end of the street and turned toward a small park nearby. The park was almost empty, with only a few lights shining over the walking path. They sat down on a bench, letting the peaceful silence settle around them. The cool air wrapped gently around their skin. They took out their earbuds and played one of their favorite calming tracks. The melody began softly, carried by rich strings and delicate piano notes. It felt like a slow tide washing through the quiet night. As they listened, their breathing loosened. Their shoulders relaxed. Their heart slowed its pace. Every note felt like a soft reminder that they were allowed to rest. They closed their eyes for a moment and listened carefully. The music blended with the natural sounds around them, the soft rustling of leaves, the distant hum of the city, the quiet footsteps of someone walking somewhere far behind them. Everything together created a peaceful world that felt safe and gentle. When they opened their eyes again, they saw the faint outline of branches swaying above them. The wind moved through the trees in a calm rhythm, almost as if it was following the music. For a moment, they felt connected to the world in a way they hadn't felt in years. It was simple, but it felt meaningful. They thought about how much had changed since they first began listening to calming music. Back then, they didn't expect anything from it. They just wanted a break from the noise inside their mind. But now, the changes were visible. They were more patient with themselves. They were kinder to their own thoughts. They didn't feel the same constant rush that once controlled their days. The person leaned back against the bench and watched a soft light flicker in the distance. They wondered how many people around them were struggling silently, carrying worries that felt too heavy. They wished everyone could find something, anything, that gave them the peace the music had given them. After a while, they stood up and continued walking. The night had grown a little colder, and the moon hung high in the sky. They slipped their hands deeper into their pockets and let the music guide their steps as they walked. They thought about their journey. It wasn't dramatic or filled with huge moments. It was full of small shifts, small realizations, small breaths, and sometimes small things could change a life. They remembered a moment from earlier in the week. It was a busy day at work, and people were moving quickly, speaking loudly, asking for things one after another. The old version of them would have felt overwhelmed, but this time they simply paused, took a slow breath, and played the calming melody in their mind. That tiny moment changed everything. A peaceful feeling spread through them, steadying their thoughts. They handled the tasks one by one. They didn't rush. They didn't panic. They simply moved through the day with a steady rhythm. It was proof that calmness wasn't something that happened to them. It was something they created. As they continued walking through the park, they passed by a small pond. The water looked dark under the night sky, but the moon reflected off the surface with a soft shimmer. The reflection rippled gently with the movement of the water. They watched the ripples for a long moment. Something about the movement reminded them of their own journey. Calmness wasn't a straight line. It had ups and downs, quiet moments, and restless ones. But it moved forward, slowly and naturally. They took a seat on a different bench near the water and let the music play. The notes were soft and steady, carrying a feeling of warmth and openness. It reminded them that they didn't need to have everything figured out. They didn't need to be perfect. They just needed to keep moving gently. As they listened, memories began to rise. Memories they hadn't visited in a long time. Some were warm, like quiet moments from childhood when they used to sit outside and listen to the world. Others were heavier, moments when life felt confusing or painful. But the music made those memories softer. It didn't erase them. It simply wrapped around them, making them easier to hold. They took a slow breath, feeling grounded. The music helped them face things without fear. It helped them understand that emotions didn't need to be pushed away. They could be felt gently, without overwhelming the heart. They looked at the moon again and realized how much they had grown. Not in a dramatic sense, but in a quiet, steady way. They were learning to accept themselves. They were learning to slow down. They were learning to find peace, even in difficult moments. After sitting by the pond for a long time, they finally stood up and started walking back home. The night was quiet, and the melody filled their ears like a soft blanket. They walked slowly, enjoying every step. When they reached their home, took off their shoes, placed their bag aside, and sat down near the window. They didn't turn on the lights right away. Instead, they let the glow of the streetlights fill the room with a soft orange hue. They continued listening to the music, letting the calmness grow. They closed their eyes and took a deep breath. The day had been long, but they didn't feel drained. They felt steady. They felt connected. They felt grateful. They thought about how this peaceful habit had slowly become a part of who they were. It didn't matter how busy life became. They always found time to sit with the music, to breathe, to rest. They knew the journey wasn't over. There would still be days that felt heavy. There would still be moments when the world became loud again. But now they had something to return to. Something that helped them find balance. The calming classical music had become a gentle guide, a patient companion, A quiet reminder that peace didn't need to be perfect, it just needed space. As the night grew deeper, they finally laid down and rested their head on the pillow. The music continued softly in the background, carrying them slowly into rest. Their eyes closed, and their breathing softened. The journey continued, and in the gentle glow of the night, they felt ready for whatever came next. The morning light slowly filled the room as the person opened their eyes, feeling the soft glow of a new day touching their face. They didn't rush out of bed. They didn't force themselves to move quickly. Instead, they lay still for a moment, listening to the quiet of their space. Their breathing was slow, steady, almost matching the gentle rhythm of calmness they had been building over the past weeks. They reached for their device and played one of the calming classical pieces that had grown familiar to them. The first notes drifted through the room like warm light. The soft piano and quiet strings seemed to greet the morning with a gentle embrace. And just like that, they felt themselves settling into a peaceful state. They sat up slowly, letting the calmness guide their actions. Morning used to feel heavy, but now it felt like a chance to reset. A moment to breathe. A quiet space before the world filled with noise. As they moved through their morning routine, washing their face, preparing a warm drink, sitting near the window, they felt a quiet gratitude growing inside them. The journey they were on was real. It had changed them in ways they could feel deeply. They no longer woke with the same heaviness. Their thoughts didn't pull them around the way they used to. There was still stress sometimes, still uncertainty. But there was also peace. They took a sip of their drink and watched the world outside. The street was slowly waking. People walked by with bags in their hands. Cars passed occasionally, and the soft sunlight touched everything with a warm glow. The person watched quietly, letting the calm melody carry them into the day. After a while, they gathered their things and stepped outside. The air had a fresh, cool feel. They slipped in their earbuds and allowed the calming music to guide their steps. Each note felt like it was filling the space inside them that used to be crowded with noise. They walked at a natural pace, not rushing, not dragging. The world felt softer around them. The sound of the music blended with the gentle hum of morning life, the footsteps, the distant voices. The sound of wind brushing through leaves as they made their way through the streets, they reflected on how far they had come. When this journey started, they were overwhelmed. They were tired. Their mind was filled with thoughts that felt heavy and restless. But day by day, moment by moment, they found comfort in the calming melodies. They found a rhythm that felt real and healing. They found themselves at work. They entered the building with a soft calmness around them. Someone greeted them with a tired expression and a polite smile. They responded with a warm and steady tone, surprising even themselves with how natural it felt. Throughout the day, there were moments of busyness. Moments when people spoke quickly. Moments when tasks piled up. But the person stayed steady. They paused when needed. They breathed when their thoughts tried to speed up. And in the back of their mind, the memory of the calming music kept them grounded. At one point, during a particularly hectic moment, they stepped away to the break area for a minute. They didn't avoid their responsibilities, they simply took a small moment for themselves. They put in their earbuds, played a familiar soft track, and let the melody guide their breathing. Within seconds, the tension in their shoulders loosened. Their thoughts aligned again. The world felt less loud. They returned to their tasks with steady energy, moving from one thing to another with calm focus. Their coworkers noticed the difference. One person said, "You always seem so peaceful lately. I don't know how you do it." The person simply smiled and replied, "I found something that helps me slow down." They didn't explain the entire journey. They didn't talk about every moment or every emotion, but deep inside, they knew how much the calming music had shaped their path. Later in the afternoon, when the sky outside turned a bit cloudy, the person looked out the window and took a silent moment to reflect. The clouds moved slowly across the sky, shifting shapes in a calm and natural rhythm. It reminded them of their own journey, always moving, always shifting, always changing in gentle ways. They finished their work and headed home. As they walked, The air carried the feeling of an approaching evening. The music in their ears softened the world again, creating a comfortable space inside their thoughts. On the way home, they stopped by a small spot near a quiet path lined with trees. They sat down on a low wall and listened to the soft rustling of leaves. The calming melodies played in their ears, blending beautifully with the natural sounds around them. They closed their eyes for a few seconds, letting the moment sink in. The simple act of sitting still, breathing gently, and listening to calming music felt like a gift they were finally allowing themselves to receive when they opened their eyes. They noticed a few small details they wouldn't have noticed before. The way sunlight filtered through the branches, the pattern of shadows on the ground, the slow movement of leaves dancing with the wind. These small things brought them a quiet joy. They realized that calmness wasn't about avoiding life. It was about being present in it. It was about noticing the gentle moments that often went unseen. After a few more minutes, they stood up and continued their walk home. When they arrived, they removed their shoes and took a deep breath. Their home felt peaceful, filled with the same soft energy they carried within themselves. They prepared a simple meal, letting calming music play softly in the background. The notes filled the space gently, making even the small tasks feel comforting. After dinner, they sat near the window again. Watching the sky grow darker as night settled in, they reflected on their journey from the beginning. They remembered the heavy days, the restless nights, the moments of stress that felt endless. They remembered the small step, the decision too. Try calming music, something that seemed so simple but ended up changing everything. They didn't become a different person. They didn't escape life's challenges. They learned how to move through life with softness. They learned how to breathe. They learned how to listen to the world, to the music, and to themselves. They leaned their head back and closed their eyes again.
Ow.
The calming melody played softly, and in that moment, emotion rose inside them. Not sadness, not stress, but a deep sense of peace. It was the peace of someone who had learned to take care of their mind. It's the peace of someone who had found a gentle path toward healing. The peace of someone who understood that they didn't have to rush through life anymore. Later, they stood up and walked toward their bed. They sat for a minute, letting the last notes of the music fill the room. The night felt warm and quiet. Their mind felt clear. They realized something important. The journey wasn't a temporary phase. It wasn't something they would someday outgrow. It had become a part of who they were, a part that brought balance, warmth, and comfort. They lay down and pulled the blanket over themselves. The calming music continued, soft and steady. Their breathing slowed naturally. Their body relaxed. Their thoughts softened as they drifted toward sleep. They thought about the future, not with worry, but with a gentle sense of hope. Life would still bring challenges. Some days would be harder than others, but now they had a way to return to calmness. They had something lasting. A slow, peaceful smile formed on their face. Their heart felt lighter. Their mind felt quiet. The calming classical music played softly in the background, carrying them into a deep, peaceful rest. This was not the end of their journey. It was just another beginning, one filled with quiet strength, steady growth, and the gentle comfort that comes from truly finding peace within.